Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, let's discuss the React hooks in detail. So React hooks are introduced in a React version 16.8 that allows the developers to use React features without writing a class. Okay. Before this React 16.8, we developers used to write the classes. Instead of that, now with the React hooks, everything is a function based instead of class based. Before we dive into understanding all the React hooks, so React hooks are applied on the web page. So if you see on the screen, there is a web page on the left side, and it has multiple components. The right side component is where you have a form, and user need to fill the name, company, phone and email address, reason for the contact, and anything else we need to know, and they can click the send message. So this is one component, and on the left side there is an image with a banner message saying let's start working, and how about starting a chart and an image. So this particular web page you can divide into two components, left component and right side component. Okay. So basically a web page consists of one or more components together working and running and parsed on the web browser is called a web page. During the component creation, all these React hooks or React lifecycle methods are going to be executed in a specific order. Now let's look at the first React hook. So the first React hook is useState. Okay. So by the name itself, state meaning it will hold something. Okay. So for suppose if you see the left side web page where you have a let's start working a message, banner message on the left side. Okay. To display this type of a message on the page, plain static message, you can define a useState constant the banner message, and there is one more method called the field name is banner message, which will hold the value, and if you want to replace the value that is part of the banner message, you need to use a set banner message method. Okay, for that reason the constant, and you have a banner message and a set banner message method, and at the same time it is, if you see, equal to useState, and let's start working is passed for the useState. That means the initial value, as soon as the page loads, the banner message will have let's start working, that specific message by default, and it will be directly rendered onto the page. Okay. If you want to change that message, okay, after the first load of the page, if you want to change that message, you need to call the set banner message method and pass the new message that you want to display. Okay, so that it will be changed. So useState is used to hold a specific individual value, whether it can be a integer type or a message type, or even it can hold the array of objects also. Okay, so you can set anything for useState, and to use it you need to use that specific first the parameter name, which is the banner message, and you can keep that in the curly braces in the HTML portion so that it will be rendered onto the page. So this is the use case for useState hook. So the second one is useEffect. Okay, if you consider the same web page on the left side, okay, we have a let's start a working message. So you have a useState with a banner message, and to change this message, okay, within the page itself and customize, for suppose if I log in or if I access this particular page, you want to show the let's start working message, and if anybody else log into this particular or navigate to this particular page, you want to show change banner message or some other message. Okay, that you want to do it during the page load itself, identify and update the message accordingly without any user interaction with the browser. Okay, for that type of scenario, you can directly set useState with let's start working, and within the useEffect you can add a condition. For suppose if you want to show the message, banner message, based on the user role. Okay, so for manager you want to show this let's start working, and for a developer you want to show change banner message. Okay, for that type of condition you can keep it, and if the condition satisfies you can use this set banner message, and you can set the different message so that it will be changed accordingly based on the person whoever accessing this particular page. So this is the purpose of useEffect. So it will affect the page when it is parsed and rendered onto the browser. Based on this effect, it can update the DOM and it can manipulate the DOM. So for this type of scenario, you can use the useEffect. The next one is useLayoutEffect, and this is also almost similar to useEffect, but useLayoutEffect is going to be called first, then useEffect is going to be called. And if there is a scenario, for example, in this particular page, we are setting the banner message, right, on the left side, like change banner message on the left side. Okay, let's start working. Okay, for suppose if you have a scenario where you want to show this banner message on the left side, top side, whatever the position that it has right now, to managers. But for suppose if you have some other role, you want to display that message under that particular image. Okay, if you have this type of scenario, you can use the useLayoutEffect. Okay, and you can check the role and align this particular content based on the scrolling of the page and display it wherever you want to. Okay, once that is done, then the useEffect is going to be called. Okay, the order point of view, useLayoutEffect will be called before the user can see the visual change in the render. Okay, whereas the useEffect will be called after a user is able to see the visual changes in that render. So the next one is useContext. So this is by the name itself, context, meaning it will be at the app level or application level. Okay, so for suppose if you have a page, the same page on the left side, right now if you see the background is completely blue color, and within that there are two components. Right side one is yellow, left side one is white background. Okay, for suppose if you have a theme, dark theme and white theme, you want to set that theme and change the colors of this particular page. So it will be, the context is across any page, every page, right? So for that type of scenario, you can go for the useContext and set this context to any page. Okay, to define the useContext, you can say constant value useContext, and you can pass the actual context which is of a theme context. Okay, for this particular page there is a theme context, and it will take the context as themes.light. So this will apply the light CSS for this particular page, and if you pass a dark theme, you can pass the dark theme also, so that it will be applied to the entire page. And if you see the HTML, you are getting hold of the theme, and from that particular theme you are getting hold of the background color and the foreground color. So this particular context can be applied at the app level instead of individual component level. Okay, not only this, even you can set the reducer, or you can even set the authentication piece also as part of the context to check whether the user is logged into every page or not. If not, just navigate to the login page. So for this type of context level features, we can directly use the useContext. So the next one is useReducer. So as part of the React application, to maintain the state, we have to use the React Redux. Okay, to connect to Redux, we need this useReducer hook. Otherwise, without using the useReducer, you cannot connect to the Redux and store your state and get that state in any of the other pages. So the purpose of Redux itself is to maintain the state, right? So the state meaning it will hold the data, and without even reloading the page, all the other pages can directly access that data that is passed to the reducer. So to define the reducer, you can use, it will have a state and a dispatch function, and it will take the reducer as a first parameter, and it will take the initial state. So for suppose if you consider this particular page on the left side, to create that send message content, okay, you have a form with a name, company, phone, email, reason and message with empty values on a page load. With this will become the initial form state, okay, that will be passed to the reducer, okay. Once the user clicking that send message, all these values are going to be submitted to the form, and from the form you can directly dispatch this form to the reducer, and for that you need to use the dispatch function. So when you dispatch this form, it will be pushed to the Redux, and wherever you want to use that particular same data, that can be directly accessed from the Redux. So this is the purpose of useReducer hook. So the next one is useCallback, okay. So for the previous example where we used useReducer, okay, as soon as we send this form data to the reducer, if you want to perform some action, okay, so for that type of scenario you can use useCallback, and you can wrap that function, whatever the function that you want to, so that once that particular inner function is done with its execution, the useCallback is going to be called. Okay, for suppose this example, once you send the message, okay, you want to display a message on the UI saying message successfully sent, okay, you want to display that message, okay. For that type of scenario, within the useCallback, okay, you can set the dispatch form, and the second piece of functionality would be displaying the message saying message successfully sent. So that particular piece to display, that can be kept in the useCallback, so that once the main functionality is done, it will call this callback, and it will display the message saying so message successfully sent. So this is the use case for the useCallback. Next one is useMemo. So useMemo accepts a function and the parameters, okay, and it will pass these parameters to that specific function. Once you get the result of that particular function, and it will return and get hold of that specific returned value, okay. For suppose in this example that you are seeing on the screen, so we want to calculate the factorial of a number, okay. The useMemo has the first parameter as factorial of a number, that is a function name, and the number array, so which is of a parameter, okay. And there is a separate function called factorial of. So when we call this particular useMemo, it will run the factorial. At the same time, it accepts the number, and it will calculate the factorial of this particular number, and it will return to the factorial property. And once it is returned, it will memorize this particular value, and it can be used within the page to display. So the next hook is useRef. So this particular useRef is applied on the CSS of the component. For suppose if you see the left side, the component where we have a form, okay, with the name property, name text box, okay, where as soon as the user navigate to this particular page, automatically we want to set the cursor at the name text box, so that the user can directly start typing it instead of clicking the mouse and set the cursor to the name text box, right? So for this type of scenario, we can use the useRef. Not only for this, even for any CSS references that we want to perform some action or apply some dynamic CSS or set the cursor or set the focus, you know, for all these type of scenarios, we can use the useRef, okay. In this example, if you want to set the reference or the focus or cursor on this particular name text box, all we need to do is use the element reference, and within the useEffect you can get hold of that element, okay. Element meaning the text box name reference, okay, that is input el, okay, input element. We can get hold of the input element dot current dot focus, so that as soon as the page is loaded, the focus will be by default on the first text box. Okay. So that user can start directly focusing on the text box and start typing it instead of clicking the mouse button and click that particular text box and start typing. So this will enhance the user experience. So the next one is useImperativeHandle. So this is one of the hooks that we don't use very often, but it can be used along with the use reference. So useRef. So if you want to perform the same behavior like focusing on a specific first text box along with the useRef, either you can use a useRef or use imperative handle, and basically imperative handle will get the use reference as a parameter, and if you want to perform any additional logic along with the useRef, so it can be done within this. Okay, like focus method input element dot focus current dot focus, this can be directly done in the useRef also. But after we focusing on it, if you want to by default input a default message, default name like Shiva, okay, after focusing on it within the use imperative handle, you can set that value Shiva, so that on the page load it can directly focus. At the same time you can display some text within that particular text box. So for this type of scenario we use imperative handle, but in real time application point of view we don't use this on regularly. So the next one is use transition. So to create a use transition, we can say it will have a first parameter which is of start transition, and the other parameter is going to be the loading parameter, which is pending or is loading or something like that. So and the transition will take the timestamp, okay, in milliseconds. So if you have this transition and using is pending, okay, it will load the it will show this loading piece on the page until we get the actual response to display to the user. So this is useful if you have a scenario where you want to get the search results and display on the page. So before you get the results, for the fraction of seconds until you get the response, you can show this use this start transition, and you can display something like loading message or loading the records, or something to engage the user until we get the response and display it to the user. So this is one of the useful and most often used React hook, and it will enhance the user experience. So the next one is useDeferredValue. Okay, for this deferred value to use, we need to use along with the state, useState. Okay, what it will do is it will have for suppose if you consider this example, it has a useState of John, and we set that John value to deferred name. Okay, and we have a list from this particular large list, we are filtering out the names, okay, based on the deferred name, which is John. So any record that is matching John will be returned as a result, and that can be displayed on the page. And in unfortunate situation, if there is no matching record, by default it will simply return John as a deferred name. Okay, so that is the purpose of deferred value, use deferred value. So the next one is useId. So you can define useId like constant ID and equal to useId. So basically it will generate a unique ID every time when we use this particular ID, and this is useful for suppose if you have a scenario on your web page where you have two different type of text boxes, and you want to name one text box as first name for first name and second one is for last name. Okay, if you want to use the ID, so you have to if you want to set a unique ID to identify the specific first name or last name text box, you can use this useId, and you can append it like HTML for ID plus some string. This ID is going to generate a unique value across every time when you call this ID, it will generate a unique value, and it will set for this particular label and input ID, so that every HTML element on the page will have its own unique ID to identify. So that's all from this particular session. I hope you understood all the React hooks. Thank you. See you in the next video.